The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a massive sphere of crystal and metal that could hold millions. Today, representatives from 47 spacefaring species had gathered for what they considered a moment of comedy. Humanity had finally arrived. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the entrance of the Great Hall and took a slow breath. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen both war and peace on Earth. Behind her stood her team of 6 diplomats, all dressed in simple black uniforms. Their ship, the Horizon, waited in the docking bay. It was small compared to the massive vessels of the other species. It looked like a toy next to the kilometer-long battleships of the Dralith Empire. "Remember," Elena said quietly to her team, "we expected this. Stay calm. Watch everything. Learn." The doors opened and they walked into the chamber. The sound hit them first. It was not the respectful silence Elena had hoped for. Instead, the chamber filled with a noise that needed no translation. Laughter, clicking, buzzing, whistling. Every species had their own way of showing amusement, and they were all doing it now. Elena kept walking toward the central platform. The path was long, and she felt the eyes of thousands upon her. Some of the aliens were massive, towering creatures of stone and metal. Others were small, floating beings of light and gas. Some had too many eyes, others had none at all. But they all shared one thing in common at this moment. They all thought humanity was a joke. High Counselor Vrath of the Dralith Empire sat on the tallest throne. His species looked like someone had crossed a lizard with a mountain. He was 4 meters tall, covered in scales the color of dried blood, and his eyes burned with ancient fire. The Dralith had ruled their section of the galaxy for 50,000 years. They had seen countless young species rise and fall. "So," Vrath said, his voice booming through the translation systems, "the mayflies have learned to fly." More laughter filled the chamber. Elena stopped at the central platform and waited for it to fade. It took a long time. "High Counselor," she said when there was finally silence, "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Government. Humanity comes in peace and friendship. We seek membership in this council and fair trade agreements with all species." Vrath leaned forward, and his throne groaned under his weight. "Membership, little creature. Do you know how long my species has existed?" 52,000 years since you achieved spaceflight," Elena replied calmly. "Your historical records are quite detailed." A murmur went through the chamber. The human had done research. "And how long have your people had faster-than-light travel?" Vrath asked, amusement dripping from every word. 12 years." The laughter returned, louder than before. 12 years. Some of the council members were older than that. The Velith Combine representative, a being made of flowing silver liquid, actually fell off its platform from laughing so hard. Counselor Thren of the Synthari did not laugh. She was a tall, thin being with skin like blue glass and 4 eyes that never blinked. Her species was known for their intelligence and their caution. She watched the human ambassador carefully and saw something the others missed. The human was not upset. She was not embarrassed or angry. She stood perfectly still, and her eyes moved slowly across the chamber, looking at each species, studying each reaction. She was watching them the way a scientist watches an experiment. Thren felt a small chill run through her crystal bones. "Ambassador," said Counselor Dren of the Monetary Union, a fat creature that looked like a toad wearing jewelry, "what could humanity possibly offer this council? You control 1 solar system, 1. I have vacation homes on more worlds than that. We offer friendship," Elena said simply, "knowledge, a new perspective, and in time perhaps more." "In time?" Vrath laughed again. "Human, you live for what? 80 years? 100 if you are lucky? I have furniture older than your entire civilization. Come back in a few thousand years when you have actually achieved something worth noticing." Elena nodded slowly. "I understand. Then I have one request. If you will not grant us membership, at least grant us the right to trade, to travel, to learn from the great civilizations of this galaxy." The council members looked at each other. Some whispered. Some shrugged their various appendages. Very well, Vrath said with a wave of his massive claw. You may trade, you may travel, but you will not sit on this council. You will not vote. You will not speak unless spoken to. Consider yourself guests in our galaxy, little humans, quiet guests who know their place. We accept these terms, Elena said with a small bow. Thank you for your time, High Counselor. She turned to leave, and Vrath called out one more time. Oh, an ambassador? We are placing your solar system under protected status. Earth is now officially a primitive nature reserve. No council species will interfere with your development. Think of it as a kindness. We are giving you time to grow up. The chamber exploded with laughter once more. A nature reserve. They were treating humanity like endangered animals in a zoo. Elena paused at the door. She turned her head slightly, and for just a moment, Thren saw something flash in the human's eyes. It was not anger. It was not shame. It was patience. The deep, cold patience of a predator that knew how to wait. Thank you, High Counselor, Elena said softly. We appreciate your protection. And then the humans were gone. The laughter continued for hours after they left. Stories spread across the galaxy about the little pink creatures who thought they could join the great powers. Comedians made jokes. News programs played the recording of Elena's speech with mocking commentary. For one brief moment, humanity united the galaxy in shared amusement. No one noticed that the human ship did not return directly to Earth. The horizon stopped at 17 different locations on its journey home. At each stop, it released small probes no bigger than a grain of sand. The probes drifted into communication networks, attached themselves to space stations, and buried themselves in the data streams of the galaxy. In her private quarters, Elena Vasquez removed her diplomatic uniform and sat down at her desk. She opened a secure channel that used encryption the Council could not detect. It used technology the Council did not know existed. This is Ambassador Vasquez, she said. Phase 1 is complete. A voice answered from the darkness of space. Report. They see what we wanted them to see. A primitive species, harmless, amusing. They have declared Earth a protected zone. No council species will monitor us closely now. We are beneath their notice. And your assessment of their military capabilities? Elena pulled up the data her team had gathered during their walk through the chamber. They had mapped every weapon, every shield, every ship in the docking bay. They had recorded the body language of every species, identified leaders and followers, found the cracks in alliances that had lasted millennia. Impressive on the surface, she said, but they have not fought a real war in 8,000 years. They have grown comfortable, lazy. They believe their power will last forever because it has lasted so long already. And the Syntheri counselor? The one who watched you? Elena smiled slightly. She is clever. She suspected something, but she will not be believed. The others are too confident in their superiority to listen to warnings about humans. Good. Continue to phase 2. Watch, learn, build. We will speak again when the time is right. The channel closed and Elena sat alone in the darkness of space. Far away beneath the surface of Earth's moon, construction continued on a facility that did not officially exist. Workers moved through tunnels that went down for miles. Ships were being built. Weapons were being designed. Scientists were unlocking secrets of physics that the Council had never imagined. Humanity had spent 10,000 years learning to fight. They had mastered the art of war. They had nearly destroyed themselves with it. And then finally, they had learned the most important lesson of all. Never show your strength to those who do not respect you. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Let them look away and forget you exist. And when the time comes, when they finally need you, when they finally ask for help with humble hearts and open hands, then you show them what you truly are. Elena looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the great powers of the galaxy slept peacefully, confident in their ancient might. They had no idea what was coming. They had looked at humanity and seen weakness. They had seen short lives and primitive ships and a small, unimportant world. They had not seen what Counselor Thren had seen. They had not noticed the patience in Elena's eyes. They had not wondered why the humans accepted their humiliation so calmly. In 50 years, they would understand. In 50 years, they would remember this day and wish they had paid more attention. But by then, it would be far too late. The horizon turned toward home, and Elena Vasquez closed her eyes. The joke of the galaxy was about to become its greatest surprise. 50 years passed like a slow breath for the ancient species of the galaxy. Empires rose slightly and fell slightly. Trade routes shifted. Old alliances grew older. The council met every cycle to discuss matters of importance, and not once in 50 years did anyone mention humanity. They had been forgotten, just as they wanted to be. But in the dark spaces between stars, in the quiet corners of trading stations, in the forgotten sectors where no one important ever looked, something was changing. Captain Vrex of the Velith Combine pulled his ship into dock at Station 47, a rusting outpost on the edge of mapped space. He was tired and annoyed. His cargo of medical supplies had been delayed by 3 weeks, and his employer was threatening to fire him. The station bar was nearly empty when he entered. A few miners sat in the corner, drinking something that glowed green. A merchant from the Dren Collective slept face down on a table. And at the bar itself, a human sat alone, drinking water. Vrex stopped. He had never actually seen a human before. They were rare this far from their protected zone. This one was male, middle-aged, with short gray hair and a face that showed no expression. He wore simple clothes, nothing that identified his profession or purpose. Vrex sat down 2 seats away and ordered a drink. "You are far from home, human," he said, trying to sound casual. The human looked at him with pale blue eyes. "I travel a lot." "What brings you to this sector? There is nothing here but old mines and broken dreams." "I am a researcher. I study dead stars." Vrex laughed. "Dead stars? What is there to study? They are dead." The human smiled slightly. It was a strange smile, Vrex thought, like he knew something funny that no one else understood. "You would be surprised," the human said. "There is much to learn from things that others have forgotten." He finished his water, placed a few credits on the bar, and walked out without another word. Vrex watched him go and felt a strange chill. There was something about that human, something in the way he moved, the way he watched everything around him, the way he seemed completely unafraid in a station full of species that could crush him with one hand. It was probably nothing, Vrex told himself. Humans were harmless. Everyone knew that. But he could not shake the feeling that he had just been studied. 3 sectors away, a Draelith border patrol encountered a human research vessel drifting near a collapsed star. Commander Threll ordered them to halt and prepare for inspection. Humans were allowed to travel, but they were supposed to stay away from Draelith territory. The human ship was small, barely larger than a shuttle. It looked old and poorly maintained. When Commander Threll brought his warship alongside, he expected the humans to be terrified. His vessel was 100 times their size, armed with weapons that could crack moons. Instead, the human captain responded to his hail with a calm voice. "Apologies, Commander. We were studying the radiation patterns of the collapsed star and drifted off course. We will leave immediately." Threll narrowed his eyes. "You will submit to inspection first. What is your cargo?" "Scientific equipment only. Sensors, computers, nothing of military value." "I will be the judge of that." The human ship opened its cargo bay, and Threll sent a team to investigate. They found exactly what the human had described. Old equipment, basic sensors, nothing impressive. But one of Threll's officers noticed something strange. The human ship had no weapons, not even basic defensive systems. Any vessel traveling this far from home without weapons was either suicidal or stupid, unless they did not need weapons. "Commander," his officer reported, "their engines are unusual. The design does not match anything in our databases." Threll looked at the human ship again. It was so small, so simple, and yet when they had approached, the human had not been afraid, not even slightly. "Let them go," Threll said finally. "They are not worth our time." The human ship turned and accelerated away. It moved faster than Threll expected, much faster. Within seconds it was gone, vanished into the darkness between stars. Threll stood on his bridge for a long time, staring at the empty space where the ship had been. He filed a report when he returned to base. The report was marked as low priority and forgotten within a week. Humans were not important enough to worry about. On the Syntheory homeworld, Counselor Thren sat in her private study and read through a stack of reports that no one else had requested. She had been collecting them for 50 years. Sightings of humans in unexpected places, trade records that showed humans acquiring technology they should not have, scientific papers published by human researchers that contain insights beyond what a primitive species should possess. Individually, each report meant nothing. Together, they painted a picture that made Thren's four eyes narrow with concern. She pulled up the recording of humanity's first appearance at the Council 50 years ago. She watched Ambassador Elena Vasquez walk through that hall of laughter. She watched those calm brown eyes scan the chamber. Thren had never forgotten that moment. She had seen something that day, something the others had missed. And 50 years of small, strange reports had only made her more certain. The humans were hiding something. She requested a meeting with the Council to share her concerns. High Counselor Vrath, still alive after 50 years thanks to Drelith longevity, denied her request. The humans are primitives, his response read. They are contained in their nature reserve. They pose no threat and deserve no attention. Focus on matters of actual importance. Thren read the message 3 times. Then she began her own investigation. She sent agents to human trading posts. She paid informants to watch human ships. She dug through every database she could access, looking for the truth. What she found only raised more questions. Humans had established small colonies on a dozen worlds outside their protected zone. The Council had allowed this, seeing it as harmless expansion. But the colonies were strange. They had no visible industry, no military presence, no apparent purpose. They were just small settlements of humans living quiet lives. Too quiet, Thren thought. What were they really doing? She never got the chance to find out. The alert came on a normal day, in the middle of a normal council session. Every screen in the galaxy suddenly showed the same image. A massive swarm of ships emerging from the void between galaxies. Millions of vessels, each one black and twisted, moving with a horrible purpose. The Harrow swarm had awakened. Every species knew the stories. Every child had heard the warnings. 10,000 years ago, the Harrow had swept through a distant arm of the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. Worlds, stations, entire civilizations. They ate everything biological, stripped every resource, and left nothing but dead rock and empty space. The great powers of that era had barely stopped them. Billions had died. The Harrow had been driven back to the void between galaxies, and the galaxy had prayed they would never return. Now they were back, and they were hungry. The first attacks came within hours. 3 council species lost their outer colonies before anyone could respond. The Harrow did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply devoured. Council fleets mobilized across the galaxy. The greatest warships ever built moved to intercept the swarm. The Drelith alone sent 1,000 vessels, each one capable of destroying a planet. The first battle lasted 6 hours. The Council lost. The Harrow adapted to every weapon. Energy beams that could crack moons barely scratched their hulls. Missiles were intercepted and consumed. Ships that tried to ram them were absorbed into the swarm. High Counselor Vrath watched the battle recordings with growing horror. His mighty fleet had been reduced by half in a single engagement. His finest commanders reported that the Harrow learned from every attack, evolved with every hour, grew stronger with every victory. Emergency sessions were called. Plans were made and discarded. Alliances that had been enemies for millennia suddenly became desperate partners. And in all the chaos, in all the fear and planning and dying, someone finally remembered the humans. "We should contact Earth," Counselor Thren said during one session. "Ask for their help." Vrath laughed bitterly. The primitives, what could they possibly offer? Their ships are toys. Their weapons are ancient. Asking humans for help would be like asking insects to fight a fire. "With respect, High Counselor, we have not actually seen human military capabilities. We assumed they had none. Perhaps we should ask. We do not have time for this foolishness. The Harrow are burning our worlds. We need real solutions, not desperate fantasies." The session ended. No message was sent to Earth. 3 weeks later, the Harrow reached the borders of the Drelith Empire itself. 12 worlds fell in 14 days. Billions of Drelith died screaming as the swarm consumed everything they had built over 50,000 years. Vrath stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his empire burn. Finally, with no other choice, the Council sent a message to every known species in the galaxy. It was a plea for help, a desperate cry from the once proud rulers of the stars. To all civilizations, the Galactic Council requests immediate military assistance against the Harrow swarm. Any species with ships and weapons is asked to respond. The survival of all life depends on unity. Responses came from 100 minor species, offering what little they had. From Earth, there was only silence. Days passed. The Harrow pushed deeper into Council space. The great powers fractured as each species prioritized its own survival. And then, just as the swarm reached the edge of the Council's capital system, a single ship appeared. It was human, small and simple, just like the ship from 50 years ago. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, now over 100 years old but still sharp-eyed and patient, requested permission to address the Council. The chamber that had once laughed at her was silent now. The representatives who remained looked broken, terrified, desperate. Elena walked to the central platform, the same one she had stood on half a century ago. She looked at the faces of the beings who had mocked her, who had called her people mayflies, who had made humanity a joke. She felt no anger, only sadness. And beneath the sadness, a cold determination that had been building for 50 years. "Counselors," she said, her voice calm and clear, "I have one question for you." Vrath leaned forward, his scales pale with exhaustion and fear. "Ask," he said. Elena looked around the chamber one last time. She saw the empty seats of species that had already been consumed. She saw the fear in eyes that had once held only arrogance. "Are you ready," she asked softly, "to see what humanity truly is?" The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Every being stared at the old human woman standing alone on the central platform. Her question hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. "Are you ready to see what humanity truly is?" High Counselor Vrath opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, the chamber shook. Alarms screamed through the station. The Harrow swarm had entered the capital system. "We do not have time for games, human," Vrath growled. "If you have something to offer, offer it now. If not, leave us to our fate." Elena did not move. Her eyes remained fixed on the massive screen behind Vrath, which showed the swarm approaching. Millions of black ships, twisted and hungry, spreading across the stars like a disease. "I asked you a question, High Counselor," she said calmly. "Your answer matters." "What do you want from us?" shouted Counselor Dren, the fat toad-like being who had once mocked humanity's single solar system. He was sweating now, his jeweled robes stained with fear. "Credits? Territory? Name your price. Just help us." "I want nothing you can buy," Elena replied. "I want something much simpler." The chamber shook again. On the screen, the first Harrow ships engaged the remaining Council defense fleet. Energy beams flashed. Ships exploded. The Harrow consumed the debris and grew stronger. Counselor Thren rose from her seat. Her 4 blue eyes met Elena's calm gaze. "Tell us what you want, Ambassador. Please." Elena looked at the Syntheri Counselor for a long moment. Of all the beings in this chamber, Thren had been the only one to treat humanity with caution instead of contempt. She had been the only one to wonder. "I want acknowledgement," Elena said finally. "I want every species in this chamber to say out loud that humanity is their equal. Not their pet, not their joke, not animals in a nature reserve. Equals." Silence again. Some of the counselors looked at each other with confusion. Others looked angry. After everything they had lost, after all the billions who had died, this human wanted words. Vrath laughed bitterly. "That is all? You want us to say you are our equal? Yes. Fine. You are our equal. Now help us." Elena shook her head slowly. "Not just you, High Counselor. Everyone. Every species in this chamber must say it. And you must mean it." "This is ridiculous," shouted the representative of the Kreth Dominion. "We are dying out there. Our worlds are burning. And you want us to stroke your human ego? I want you to understand something, Elena said. And for the first time, her voice carried an edge. For 50 years, we watched you. We learned your languages, your cultures, your histories. We know every war you have fought, every mistake you have made, every moment of cruelty and kindness in your long civilizations. And we have been preparing. She paused to let that sink in. We could have revealed ourselves at any time. We could have demanded respect through force, but that is not our way, not anymore. We learned long ago that power taken by force is never truly held. Respect must be given freely. So I ask you again, not as a demand, but as a request. Acknowledge us as equals, and we will show you what we have become. The chamber was silent. On the screen behind them, the battle raged. The council fleet was losing badly. Soon the Harrow would reach the station itself. Counselor Thren stepped forward. The Synthari acknowledge humanity as our equal. Her words echoed through the chamber. Slowly, other voices joined. The Veleth Combine acknowledges humanity as our equal. The Dren Collective acknowledges humanity as our equal. One by one, they spoke. Some with reluctance, some with shame, some with desperate hope. Species that had laughed at humanity 50 years ago now spoke the words that Elena had asked for. Finally, only Vrath remained silent. The old Drelith looked at the human woman standing before him. He remembered the day she had first come to this chamber, small and fragile, and so easily dismissed. He remembered laughing at her, calling her people mayflies. Now his empire was burning, his people were dying, and this mayfly was the only one offering hope. The Drelith Empire, Vrath said slowly, each word costing him something precious, acknowledges humanity as our equal. Elena closed her eyes for a brief moment. When she opened them, they held something new. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just a deep, tired relief. Thank you, she said softly. She raised her hand to her ear, where a small communication device sat. This is Ambassador Vasquez, she said. Authorization code, Prometheus Rising. They have asked. Begin. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the stars changed. Across the capital system, space itself seemed to tear open. Not the usual blue swirl of faster-than-light travel that the Council used. This was different. This was doors opening from somewhere else, somewhere outside normal space, somewhere the Council had never imagined. And through those doors came the human fleet. The counselors watched in stunned silence as ship after ship emerged. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Ships of every size, from small fighters to massive carriers that dwarfed even the largest Drelith warships. But it was not the numbers that stole the breath from every being in that chamber. It was the technology. The human ships moved through space without visible engines. They flickered and jumped, appearing in one place and then another, without crossing the distance between. Their hulls shimmered with energy that the Council's sensors could not identify. That is impossible, whispered Vrath. We have been watching them. They had nothing. Basic ships, primitive technology. How? You watched what we wanted you to watch, Elena said. You saw what we wanted you to see. On the screen, the first human ships engaged the Harrow swarm. The Harrow had adapted to every weapon the Council possessed. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, plasma cannons. They had learned to resist them all within hours. The humans did not use any of those weapons. A single human cruiser approached a cluster of Harrow ships. It fired once. A beam of pure white light shot from its bow and touched the nearest Harrow vessel. The Harrow ship simply ceased to exist, not exploded, not burned. It was unmade. The matter that had composed it scattered into atoms and dispersed into the void. The swarm reacted instantly, 1,000 ships turning toward the human cruiser. They fired everything they had. The shots passed through the human ship as if it were not there. More human vessels moved into position, surrounding the Harrow swarm. They fired together, their white beams cutting through the black mass like light through shadow. Harrow ships died by the hundreds, then the thousands. And still the humans came. More doors opened, more ships emerged. Fleet after fleet appeared from the hidden dimensions where humanity had been building for 50 years. Counselor Thren watched the battle with her 4 eyes wide. Her species was known for their ability to analyze and predict. She had studied military tactics for centuries. She could not understand what she was seeing. "Their coordination," she whispered. "It is perfect. Every ship knows exactly where every other ship is. They are not just fighting together. They are fighting as one single mind." Elena heard her and nodded. "We call it the Unity Protocol. Every human vessel is connected to every other. When one ship learns something, all ships know it instantly. When one captain sees a weakness, every captain can exploit it." "But the Harrow adapt," Thren said. "That is what makes them so deadly. They learn from every attack." "Yes," Elena agreed. "They do. But they learn slowly. They need time to analyze, to evolve, to grow new defenses. We do not give them time." On the screen, the human fleet demonstrated exactly what she meant. Every few seconds, their weapons changed. Different frequencies, different energy patterns, different attack vectors. The Harrow tried to adapt, but before they could adjust to one weapon, the humans were already using another. In 30 minutes, half the Harrow swarm was destroyed. In 1 hour, only scattered remnants remained. The battle that the Council had been losing for months was over in less than 90 minutes. The chamber was absolutely silent. Every counselor stared at the screen, watching the last Harrow ships flee into the darkness. They had just witnessed something beyond their understanding. A species they had dismissed as primitive had just saved their entire civilization with technology they could not comprehend. Elena stood on the central platform, her old face calm, her eyes tired but satisfied. "It is done," she said. "The swarm is broken. Your worlds are safe." Vrath found his voice first. "How?" he demanded. "How did you do this? Where did this fleet come from? Where did this technology come from?" "We built it," Elena said simply, "in places you could not see, using science you do not understand. For 50 years, while you watched our nature reserve and laughed at our primitive ships, we were preparing for this day." "Preparing? Preparing for what? How could you have known the Harrow would return?" Elena smiled sadly. "We did not know about the Harrow specifically. We prepared for any threat, because we learned from our own bloody history that threats always come eventually. The only question is whether you are ready when they arrive." The counselors looked at each other. For the first time in 50 years, they truly saw humanity. Not as jokes, not as mayflies, not as primitives playing at civilization. They saw what Elena had wanted them to see all along. A species that had learned from its mistakes. A species that planned for the worst while hoping for the best. A species that hid its strength until the moment it was truly needed. "What happens now?" Vrath asked quietly. Elena looked at him with those calm brown eyes that had seen so much, that had waited so long. "Now," she said, "we talk about the future. But first there is one more thing you need to see." She touched her communication device again. "Bring in the Swarm Queen." Every counselor froze. The Swarm Queen, the heart of the Harrow, the one creature that controlled the entire swarm. "You captured it?" Thren whispered. "Alive?" "Yes," Elena said, "because destroying the Harrow was never our goal. Understanding them was, and what we have learned changes everything." The chamber doors opened, and 4 human soldiers walked in, escorting a container of shimmering energy. Inside the container, something massive and dark pulsed with alien life. The Queen of the Harrow Swarm had come to the Galactic Council, and humanity was about to show the galaxy that true strength was not just the power to destroy, it was the wisdom to know when destruction was not the answer. The container sat in the center of the council chamber, pulsing with dark energy. Inside, the Harrow Queen moved slowly, her massive form pressing against the shimmering walls that held her prisoner. She was unlike anything the counselors had ever seen. A creature of pure hunger, given shape, with a body that seemed to shift between solid and shadow. Every being in the chamber moved as far from the container as they could, except for Elena Vasquez, who walked toward it without fear. "Ambassador," Vrath warned, his voice tight, "that creature has consumed billions of lives. It should be destroyed, not studied." "The Harrow have consumed trillions of lives over their long existence," Elena replied calmly. "Destroying this one queen would not end them. There are others, sleeping in the void between galaxies. Kill this one, and another will rise. Kill that one, and another. The cycle never ends, unless we break it. She stopped in front of the container and looked at the queen. We have been communicating with her for 6 hours, Elena continued. It took time to establish a connection. The Harrow do not think like us. Their language is not words. It is memories, emotions, images shared directly from mind to mind. You can speak to it? Thren asked, fascinated despite her fear. Not speak exactly. We can exchange understanding, and what we have learned has changed everything we thought we knew about the Harrow. Elena turned to face the council. Her old face was grave. The Harrow are not evil. They do not destroy because they enjoy it. They destroy because they are afraid. Silence greeted her words. Then Counselor Dren burst out in bitter laughter. Afraid? They have burned 100 worlds. They have killed billions of my people. And you say they are afraid? Yes, Elena said simply. They are afraid of what is chasing them. The laughter died instantly. Something is chasing the Harrow? Vrath asked slowly. Elena nodded and touched a control on her wrist. The main screen behind the council thrones flickered to life, showing images that made even the ancient Draelith go pale. The Harrow call them the Silence. We do not have a better name, because the Harrow cannot truly describe them. They are creatures from outside our universe, things that do not obey our laws of physics, things that consume not just matter and energy, but time itself. The images on screen showed darkness, not the darkness of space, which is simply the absence of light. This was something else, an active darkness that moved and spread, erasing everything it touched. Stars vanished into it, planets disappeared. Even light itself seemed to be swallowed. 10,000 years ago, the Silence found the Harrow in their home galaxy, Elena continued. They began to consume them. The Harrow fled, moving from galaxy to galaxy, always running, always being chased. They consume other species not out of cruelty, but because they need the resources to keep running, to keep their queens alive, to survive. So the Harrow are victims? Thren asked quietly. They are survivors. Like any creature, they do what they must to live. But they have been running for so long that they have forgotten how to do anything else. They have forgotten that there might be another way. Elena walked back to the container and placed her hand against its surface. The queen inside stopped moving and focused all her attention on the tiny human. We have shown her another way. We have shared our own history with her. Humans were once like the Harrow, in our own small way. We consumed resources without thinking. We fought each other endlessly. We nearly destroyed our own world. But we learned to change. We learned to build instead of destroy. We learned to work together instead of consuming each other. You think the Harrow can change? Vrath asked with disbelief. I know they can, because the queen has already begun to change. She has felt something she has never felt before. Hope. The queen pulsed with light inside the container. For a moment, she did not look like a monster. She looked like something desperate and tired, something that had been running in fear for longer than most civilizations had existed. What are you proposing, Ambassador? Thren asked carefully. Elena turned back to the council. I am proposing an alliance. The Harrow have knowledge of the Silence that we need. They have been fighting these creatures for 10,000 years. They know their weaknesses, their patterns, their behaviors. And the Harrow needs something they cannot get anywhere else. A home, a place to stop running, a reason to hope. You want us to ally with the species that nearly destroyed us? Counselor Dren shouted. This is madness. Is it? Elena asked. Or is it wisdom? The Silence are coming. They follow the Harrow wherever they go. They will reach our galaxy eventually. When they do, we will need every ally we can get. She looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. You called humanity primitive. You called us mayflies. You laughed at our small territory and our short lives. But in our short existence, we have learned something that you have not. The universe is too dangerous to face alone. The only way any of us survives is together. Vrath stood slowly from his throne. For the first time, he looked truly old. Not the ancient power of a mighty ruler, but the tiredness of someone who has seen too much. You hid from us for 50 years, he said. You built fleets and weapons beyond our comprehension. You could have conquered the entire galaxy. Why did you not? Elena smiled sadly. Because we tried that once. Long ago on our own world. We built empires and conquered each other for thousands of years. It brought us nothing but pain. Our greatest lesson was not how to fight. It was learning when not to fight. When to offer a hand instead of a fist. She walked toward Varath until she stood directly before the massive Dralith. We could have revealed ourselves when you called us primitives. We could have shown you our ships and demanded respect. But fear is not respect. Submission is not friendship. We wanted you to ask for our help. We wanted you to need us. Because then, when we helped you, it would mean something. Vrath stared down at the tiny human woman. She was so small, so fragile. A creature whose entire lifespan was a moment compared to his own. And yet she was offering him something no conqueror could take. Something that could only be given. Why? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why help us at all? We mocked you. We dismissed you. We treated you like animals. Elena reached up and placed her hand on the Dralith's massive claw. Her skin was warm against his ancient scales. Because that is who we choose to be, she said simply. We had a choice. We could have become like the old empires of our past, taking what we wanted through force, or we could become something new, something better. We chose to be the species that helps, even when we have been hurt. We chose to be the species that offers peace, even when we have the power to wage war. She stepped back and addressed the entire council. 50 years ago, you asked me what humanity could offer the galaxy. I told you we offered friendship. You laughed. I am making the same offer today. Friendship, alliance, a place at a new table where every species is equal. Where we face the darkness together instead of alone. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Councillor Thren stood. The Syntheri accept your offer, she said. We will stand with humanity against the silence. One by one, other voices joined. The Velith Combine stands with humanity. The Dren Collective stands with humanity. Species that had laughed at humans, species that had nearly been destroyed by the Harrow, species that had fought each other for millennia. They all spoke the same words. Finally, Vrath spoke. The Dralith Empire stands with humanity, he said heavily, and I owe you a personal apology, Ambassador. I called your people mayflies. I see now that I was wrong. You may live short lives, but you have learned more in your brief existence than we have learned in 50,000 years. Elena bowed her head slightly. Apology accepted, High Counselor, and for what it is worth, your people are not beyond learning. None of us are. That is the hope that keeps us moving forward. She turned to the container where the Harrow Queen waited. There is one more thing. The Queen wishes to address the Council. She has never communicated with so many minds at once, but she wants to try. She wants you to understand. The container's walls grew transparent, and the Queen's presence filled the chamber. It was not a voice. It was something deeper, a wave of images and emotions that washed over every being present. They felt her fear. 10,000 years of running, always running, never stopping. The horror of watching her children consumed by something that could not be fought, could not be understood, could not be escaped. They felt her desperation. The choice to consume other species, not from hatred, but from the terrible mathematics of survival. Feed or die, grow or be destroyed. And finally they felt something new, a tiny spark of hope, planted by the strange small creatures who had defeated her children, but offered mercy instead of death. A vision of a future where running was not the only option. When it was over, many of the counselors were weeping. Even Vrath, who had not shed tears in 10,000 years, felt moisture on his ancient scales. We will help you, Thren said to the Queen. We will find a way to fight the silence together. The Queen pulsed with something that felt like gratitude. Elena watched the moment with quiet satisfaction. This was what she had worked for. Not conquest, not revenge, not proving that humanity was strong. This, connection, understanding, the beginning of something new. But she knew it was only the beginning. The silence was still out there, consuming universes, erasing reality itself. They would come eventually, and when they did, the galaxy would need to be ready. She touched her communication device. Vasquez to Fleet Command. Begin Phase 3. The Council has agreed. Start moving our research vessels to the galactic edge. We need to know everything about the silence before they arrive. A voice answered in her ear. Understood, Ambassador. Phase 3 is active. We will be ready. Elena looked out at the stars beyond the council chamber. Somewhere in the vast darkness, something terrible was coming. Something that had chased the Harrow across galaxies. Something that consumed time itself. Humanity had hidden for 50 years, building strength in secret. Now it was time to use that strength. Not to conquer, not to destroy, to protect, to unite, to become what the galaxy needed them to be. Elena closed her eyes and smiled. The joke of the galaxy had become its last hope, and humanity would not fail. 5 years had passed since the day humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. 5 years of change, of healing, of preparation. The old council chamber still floated between the stars, but it was no longer the same place where 47 species had once laughed at a small human delegation. Now it was the heart of something new. The United Galactic Assembly met for the first time on a bright morning, as measured by the artificial sun that now warmed the station. Representatives from over 100 species filled the expanded chamber. Old powers sat beside young civilizations. Former enemies shared tables. And in a special section near the center, a delegation of Harrow Queens attended their first official meeting as members of the assembly. Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched from a balcony above the main floor. She was 112 years old now, kept alive by human medicine that could extend life far beyond its natural limits. But even with all their technology, she knew her time was running short. Soon, a new generation would carry the torch she had held for so long. She did not mind. She had seen enough. She had done enough. A young human aide stood beside her. A woman named Sarah Chen, who had been born after humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. To Sarah, the old stories of mockery and hidden fleets were history, not memory. They are finally calling for the vote, Sarah said, watching the proceedings below. Elena nodded slowly. Today, the Assembly would vote on the Unified Defense Protocol, a plan that would combine the military forces of every member species into a single coordinated fleet. It was the largest cooperative effort in galactic history, and it was necessary, because the silence was closer than ever. Human scouts had been watching the void between galaxies for 5 years. They had mapped the silence's approach, tracked its movements, studied its patterns. The news was not good. The silence moved slowly by galactic standards, but it moved steadily. In another century, perhaps 2, it would reach the edges of known space. The galaxy had a deadline, and for the first time in history, it was working together to meet it. The vote proceeded smoothly. One by one, species announced their support. The Dralith Empire, once the proudest and most isolated of the great powers, voted yes without hesitation. High Counselor Vrath himself had championed the protocol, working alongside human diplomats to convince reluctant species. The old lizard had changed in the years since humanity saved his empire. He walked slower now, spoke softer, but there was a new light in his ancient eyes, a purpose he had not felt in millennia. Even the Harrow voted yes, their queens speaking through translators that converted their mind images into words. The galaxy still feared them, still remembered the billions they had consumed. But fear was slowly becoming understanding. The Harrow shared their knowledge freely now, teaching other species about the silence, helping to develop weapons and defenses that might actually work against the impossible enemy. When the final count was announced, the vote was unanimous. Every species in the assembly had agreed to fight together. Elena felt tears on her old cheeks. She had never expected to see this day. A galaxy united. Former enemies standing as allies. A future worth fighting for. Sarah noticed her tears and looked concerned. Ambassador, are you all right? Elena smiled and wiped her eyes. I am better than all right, child. I am watching history change. I am watching the galaxy grow up. Below them, the celebration began. Species that had never shared a room now shared drinks and stories. Dralith warriors clapped human soldiers on the back. Syntheri scientists compared notes with Harrow engineers. 100 languages filled the air, translated instantly by systems that had been designed to bring understanding instead of division. Later that day, Elena attended a smaller meeting in the chambers of the new Defense Council. Here the real work would happen. Strategy, planning, the endless details of preparing a galaxy for a war unlike anything it had ever faced. General Marcus Webb led the human delegation. He was young by human standards, only 60, but he had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His parents had been among the first generation to work on the Hidden Fleet, building ships in dimensions the Council could not see. The latest scouts report no change in the Silence's trajectory, he reported to the assembled commanders. We have approximately 170 years before they reach the outer arms, possibly less if they accelerate. That is not much time, rumbled Vrath, his massive form hunched over a holographic display of the galaxy. Our fleets are strong, but the Silence is like nothing we have ever faced, which is why we do not plan to fight them the way we fight normal enemies, said a human scientist named Dr. Yuki Tanaka. She was the lead researcher on Project Daybreak, humanity's secret program to develop weapons that could actually harm the Silence. We have been studying the data the Harrow shared with us. The Silence is not truly alive, not in any way we understand. They are more like a natural disaster, a force of entropy that consumes reality itself. Can such a thing be stopped? Asked Counselor Thren, her four eyes focused intently on the data. Maybe, maybe not. Dr. Tanaka pulled up a new display showing complex mathematical formulas. But we believe we can redirect them. The Silence follows certain paths, drawn by concentrations of matter and energy. If we can create a strong enough alternative target, we might be able to lead them away from the galaxy entirely. Lead them where? Vrath asked. Dr. Tanaka hesitated. That is the difficult part. We would need to create something massive enough to attract their attention. Something that would burn brightly enough to draw them away. And whatever that something is, it would be consumed completely. Silence fell over the chamber. Everyone understood what she was saying. Someone would have to sacrifice something enormous to save the rest. Elena spoke for the first time. We have time to find another way. The purpose of this council is not to plan sacrifices. It is to find solutions. I have faith that minds working together can solve problems that no single species could solve alone. General Webb nodded in agreement. The ambassador is right. We have 170 years and the combined intelligence of over 100 species. Let's use that time wisely. The meeting continued for hours, plans discussed and refined, ideas shared and debated. When it finally ended, Elena walked slowly through the corridors of the station, looking out at the stars. Sarah Chen found her there, standing before a window that showed the distant arm of the galaxy where Earth waited. You should rest, Ambassador, Sarah said gently. The doctors say you are pushing yourself too hard. I will rest soon enough, Elena replied. But first I wanted to see this. One more time. She gestured at the stars beyond the window. When I was a child, we did not know if life existed beyond Earth. We looked up at those lights and wondered if we were alone. Now I look at those same stars and see friends, allies, a future that stretches beyond anything my ancestors could have imagined. She turned to face the young woman beside her. Do you know why I am telling you this, Sarah? Sarah shook her head. Because someday, you will stand where I stand now. You will carry the responsibility of representing humanity to the galaxy. And when that day comes, I want you to remember something. Elena placed her old hand on Sarah's shoulder. Our strength is not in our ships, not in our weapons, not in the technology we build. Our strength is in our ability to change, to grow, to look at our enemies and see potential friends. The galaxy once laughed at us because we were small and young. They do not laugh anymore. But the reason they respect us now is not because we can destroy them. It is because we choose not to. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in her eyes. We spent thousands of years learning how to fight, Elena continued. We nearly destroyed ourselves with that knowledge. But we survived, and we learned something more important. We learned that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies. It is turning them into allies. The Harrow consumed billions of lives. Now they stand beside us as friends. That transformation is worth more than any battle ever won. She looked back at the stars. The silence is coming. It may be the greatest threat this galaxy has ever faced, but I am not afraid, because for the first time in history, the galaxy is united, and a galaxy that stands together can face anything. Far below them, in the main chamber of the assembly, the celebration continued. Species that had been strangers were becoming friends. Ancient hatreds were being set aside. A new chapter in galactic history was being written. And in the quiet of the observation deck, an old human woman smiled at the stars and knew that her life's work was complete. The Galactic Council had laughed at humans once. They had called them primitives, mayflies, a joke that was not worth taking seriously. They were not laughing anymore. But not because they feared humanity, not because human fleets could destroy their worlds, not because human technology surpassed their own. They were silent because they had learned respect. True respect, earned through actions instead of demanded through force. They were silent because when humans spoke, their words carried weight. They were silent because humanity had proven that strength and mercy could exist together, that power could be used to protect instead of conquer. Outside the station, ships from 100 worlds moved in peaceful patterns, their lights blinking in the darkness like a promise. Somewhere in that darkness, the silence waited. But the galaxy would face it together, united for the first time in history. And at the heart of that unity stood humanity, not as rulers, not as conquerors, as guardians, as friends. As the species that had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true civilization is not measured by the power to destroy, but by the choice to protect. Elena closed her eyes and let the light of a billion stars wash over her. The joke of the galaxy had become its greatest hope, and the hope was just beginning.